Today, we discuss the Cult of the Phoenix, also translated as the Sect of the Phoenix by Jorge Luis Borges.
This might be the most clever use of being ambiguous ever. Good job, Borges, as always.
I would say we open up, and it's 3 pages long, at least in the version that I have. And it as usual, it's ambiguous to your point. Right, it gives you that Ozymandias feeling where we've moved on to what we used to be, fallen kingdoms are forgotten, et cetera, et cetera. But the premise of this whole 3 pages, this whole story, is that there used to be this secret sect or cult, depending on your translation, and it's one that transcends like language, regionality. It's everybody, anybody could be a member, and what unites them is this secret. And I will probably through the discussion use the word religion. I don't know the original Spanish word used, but I know sect and cult actually both have kind of like religious. It's a loaded word, I'll say that.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of undertones when you say cult, especially nowadays from the 80s, 90s, and modern times. There's always a negative connotation to it. And then there's this undertone of religion that is thrown in there often, not always, but it definitely is there probably more often than not.
Well, okay, fun fact, I looked up the history of the word. I thought I'd share it here just for the purpose, because post 60s, 70s, 80s, those words are loaded compared to when this was written in the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. Earliest usage. The cult comes from the Latin cultus, meaning worship or cultivation, as in cultivating reverence for a deity. And it entered English in the early 1600s and was used neutrally to describe a system of religious worship or ritual, or a devotion to a particular figure, object, or practice. And that is a much different loaded term today, where I think to me, it has a lot more negative connotation. Like, you don't want to be in a cult or sect, I think, typically.
I would agree with that. I don't know so much maybe the word sect. I think that is definitely a word that is very limited use, but cult is thrown around very often in sports, politics, different types of religions, Star Wars, cult, everything, right? It definitely is used more often in our vernacular nowadays.
Not that I meant to do this transition, but in the same way that words transition through time, so do typically belief systems and religions, right? We find out certain religions are dead, have no backing, new ones take their place. It's interesting that the one consistent thing about humankind is typically thought of as change, right? Where we constantly change our belief and stuff like that. What do you think's happening here? Like, what's your personal takeaway? You, Crypto, when you read this, where the narrator describes this Phoenix sect as existing across cultures, humanity, eras, even. And it's kind of like combining, I guess. I didn't feel like it was changing to me. Like how did that land upon you as like a consistent thing through time, as opposed to what we know is consistent as change?
Man, that's a deep question. I think in the story, Borges is always looking for the connection of humanity. What connects us as a people? There's a lot of answers there. And I think it just comes down to that we are all looking for connection. I don't know. Maybe that's a cheesy answer.
Well, let's put it this way, because I know a lot of people have a theory of what the secret is. What do you think the secret is, and why do you think he veils it behind like the curtains, if you will?
Okay, yeah. First part I think is easy for me to answer. The second part, definitely a little trickier. Most interpret this as sexual intercourse is what he's talking about. And I think it's something that is, what is the word? Not a faux pas. What is the word where it's not supposed to be talked about? It's something that is quote secretive, but not secretive. And I think that a lot stems from like religious aspects. This is something you're not supposed to talk about, especially in American culture. This is something that taboo, right? Taboo. It's a taboo subject. That's the word I was looking
Yeah.
for. This is a
Yeah, that's
taboo
what I thought you were
subject.
saying.
Yes, okay. You understand me. This taboo subject is something that revolves around all of society. It's how we all got here. You know, if you're watching this, then it happened. And this is something that is a motivator for a lot of people in their life. It's very important in relationships. It's very important to a lot of people. For something being so important, literally vital to life, that can be so taboo and should not be spoken about, it's very strange. So maybe he's trying to make fun of everybody of why is this such a big deal to talk about?
So would you then, I'm putting words into your mouth, sorry. Would you then take the name of the sect is the Phoenix, right? Or at least that's the name we give them. They don't have a name for themselves. Is that because of this rebirthing? Like that's how we regenerate. That's how we stay alive. The selfish gene theory, if you will.
I think that's an interpretation you can go with. Life and death, rebirth, dies from the ashes, ashes going to the ground, sustenance for food, rebirth of life. I think that is a good circular pattern that you can use the Phoenix for. Sure.
I was kind of like wondering, where's Borges going with this? Because he's so ambiguous with the story. And I really went all over the place, right? Like I tried to look at like a lot of different religions. Like, was there one particular one? And maybe there is, but like nothing really stuck out to me. But like maybe it's just like that concept of like a belief system. I wondered if this is what he's kind of talking about, because Tower of Babel, right? That story, God disseminated people all across the world, changed our language so we could no longer communicate, right? And what I think is interesting is that why would the Phoenix not be written down, right? Why is it only, or was it the other way? It's only written down and not communicated orally because it's not talked about. That's what it is. Like, it's the complete opposite of the natural way that we've communicated everything, right? And the only way that you can learn about it might be through friends and family, like not necessarily even like your parents, but family might tell you. It's like, what is the point of that? Because like, I think of like the strangest things, for example, like a sporting game. Like back in the 50s, people just went in their regular work clothes, like suits, back when he wrote this. So like there's no way he'd predict this. But like now, when you go to a sporting game, what do you wear?
Your jersey for your team.
You support the team. It's what connects the city to the team to the city to you. And what divides it, what combines people also divides them, right? Like the idea that, oh, you're rooting for that team, I can't even talk to you anymore, right? And then you could take the same thing with politics. Depending on who you're voting for in politics might make you like, I can't friend you if you're on the other side, essentially. And don't we also see that with like these religions and these belief systems? It's interesting how human beings find a way. It's far easier for humans to find a way to separate us by classification than it is to connect with someone, I feel like, sometimes based on that.
The story definitely has a open-ended viewpoint of our cultural knowledge, our cultural appropriation. And if you do think that the story is about making babies, then it's hard to look at it from just his point of view. I think he's trying to write beyond that. At least that's how I kind of took it. When he wrote it, it's a very different time period than now. But I look back at it and I think of looking through the lens of, history and religion and culture. It feel like sex has always been not only taboo, but almost this like shameful thing. And that's kind of the key word that I took away from this is he poking fun at us of why is it so shameful that something so natural to all living creatures, mammals, I guess, not all living creatures, but lots of living creatures. This is a natural part of life. And we don't, as humans, entirely embrace that. And maybe we should. And maybe that's the point of the story that I got out of this is it's something that shouldn't be the secret. That everybody should know this. It shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, because when I'm reading this, I'm reading it decades later where the word, I can say the word sex and it's not that big of a deal, right? But to your point about it being taboo, it was a much bigger deal in the 50s. Now, I have no idea what it was like in Borges' country in Argentina and such at the time. I'm guessing, right, that it's more taboo. That, like, to give it a name, I guess, I always went the religious route with this one. We're flipping roles. Usually you're the one going the religious route. Now it's me.
Right.
Like, I thought about, like, the usage of, like why, like, like they talk about, like, the name of God is lost, like Yahweh. Right, we don't know how to pronounce it. We don't know the word. It's gone, and it's this power that when you can say it, you get all the knowledge essentially. And that's one of those things that, like, it's not that it's not said because it's taboo. It's not said because it's not known. Right, and that enters into this world of forbidden knowledge. Right, that you can't know something, and I like how. We may not know we may use the word Yahweh, we may not know the actual word for God or what it is, like to like the Spectre writings and stuff that we've talked about. Like in the Crime of the Mathematician or whatever story from her was a really good exploration of that. But what's interesting about this story is it kind of evoked some of those, when we looked into Shintoism from like Japanese culture, it was their way of life. And they didn't call themselves Shintoists. Like, that was something foreigners came in and named them in the same way that the Phoenix don't identify as Phoenix members. It was named by them. They didn't have a written down system. They didn't have a doctrine. It was just like their way of being. Like, they were drawn to it, like a kismet feeling of this is what I will do, and it comes naturally. And there's not, like, if we look across all the different religions across time, like, there's no natural religion that a lot of people have just fallen into. Like, there's things that have risen in popularity and things that have fallen. And to your interpretation about, like, making babies, like, that is one thing, like, you don't need to be taught. Everybody is typically drawn to it. I'm not saying asexual individuals don't exist and that sort of thing. But, like, it's much more common for people to be drawn than they are to one particular religion that nobody else understands. Right. And I think that's kind of like an interesting way to look at it, is like, what is that hidden thing that we don't talk about, but we all end up at that answer. And even though we don't have a name for it, Yahweh, sex, or we're not allowed to say it, like, we end up there. And I think that's kind of like an interesting thing of, like, how many things do we just naturally figure out as a species, if you will?
It's inevitable, right? This is something that is just going to happen for most of us as young children. You start to notice the difference between boys and girls. You start to notice things. You're like, I kind of like that. And, like, for me, my wife is a blonde. I that's what I find attractive. That attractiveness is bred into us because we are literally animals. Even though we think we're the most intelligent and we're at the top of the food chain on the planet, we are still literally animals just like the others on this planet. And it's something that is biological. From the story, there is one piece that I thought it was interesting, is that he says only the initiated. I was going to ask, what do you think about that? Because I was like, I knew about this taboo subject before I was initiated into this subject. And because of my knowing, I wanted to be part of the group so much more as a young teenage boy. So I was wondering what you think, kind of the interpretation of that you only know the secret once you're in the club. And I don't agree with Borges on that.
Well, you have to remember, I mean, you're winning me over with your interpretation. I do like it. Like, that was not my natural inclination. Mine was more on the religious side. And it talked about tying it to yours. It talked about the promise was eternal life. Doesn't everybody kind of, like, at some level show some interest in wanting eternal life, or at least a fear of death, a death drive, if you will? And when you look at, like, these religions across the world, like Christianity, Islam, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of them typically have this way of extending your being, your essence, your spirit, your soul, like what nirvana, like whatever you want to call it. It's this unnatural drive. And I don't think people view making babies. It totally can be, but like when you're not initiated, like that's not like your main thing of like, I feel like consciously you're like, this will allow me to live forever by passing on my genes, passing on my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It's true, but you don't realize it. Like you're just drawn to it, even though you're not initiated. There's like this whole book, The Selfish Gene, whether you followed it, ascribe to it or not, but it talks about like everybody's purpose is to make sure your genes are passed on, even though you're not initiated. That is something that at the cellular level, there's like a drive to kind of like reproduce. So on one level, I like the living on forever question mark. And I thought the answer was religion, but I actually kind of start to like your interpretation that you're winning me over a little bit of like, oh, like this does have some of those natural biological draws of reproducing to let your genes live on. I think that's an interesting angle that I hadn't really thought about. And I don't think you have to be initiated, to your point, to have that drive.
I remember when I got back home after my grandmother's funeral, and my wife and I were sitting out on our deck in North Carolina, and it was 6, 7 o'clock at night, and we were having a drink and just kind of talking, and, you know, I was reminiscing and stuff. And I thought about, you know, in a couple of generations, my grandma's name won't be remembered except for what's on on her tomb, in the mausoleum. And I thought, you know, I don't have children, and maybe I'll have great nieces and nephews, but then I'll die after that. And in a couple generations, besides these videos, if they live on, I'll be gone, you know, and I won't be remembered, but besides the videos and stuff that to history. So what I guess it comes down to is the secret is just you and your life, right?
Yeah, I guess whether you're a passing on your genes or your YouTube essence, like
my YouTube essence. Never say that again.
Smash that subscribe button to let our essence live on, people. We'd appreciate it. Oh, my name's Ben Una. I'm sorry you spent time with us today, but thank you.
Peace, essence boy.